This is the Allura Code, a transmission for creators, sensitives, and visionaries who know they're built for more, who can feel the signal beneath the noise. Here we decode the hidden patterns running your life, the ones shaping your wealth, your relationships, your body, your art. It blends human design, field energetics, ancient tech, and quantum energetic architecture to recalibrate your system back to truth. You will learn to tune into your body, recognize what truth feels like, and use that as your guidance. This is a multidimensional approach to allow the whole of your being to come together in a convergence of self-discovery and alignment so that you may begin live from full alignment and press play on life. This isn't self-help, it's self-remembrance. Each episode is a map, a key, a mirror. If you dare to meet the real you beneath the programming, welcome home to the Allura Code.
And as we talked about off camera just before we got on, the idea of this is really to, or one of the kind of the underlying is for people to really understand the mechanics of transformation, but also to really understand the core reason for it, which is, or one of the main pillars anyway, is that psychological suffering is not necessary. It's only optional. And so, and with the work that you're currently doing, and by the way, I really enjoyed that session that we did last week, and I've been have just like dove in headfirst into that core concept. So maybe you could just to start off with is describe a little bit about what you're doing now, and then maybe share just kind of how you got here.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I was raised in a religious family, and I just thought that Christianity and the version of God that I was told was the ultimate truth. And in my 20s, I had a moment where I had an awakening out of that. Some new information came to me and something clicked in my brain, and I realized that the religion I had been dedicated in and raised in and stuffed full of beliefs with was not the actual reality, was not the ultimate truth. And I set out on a journey to discover what that was. And I did many things, encountered many different people, belief systems, religions, practices. I became an astrologer. I started facilitating psychedelics and transformational coaching, emotional healing, started meditating like a psychopath, went to India, sat with gurus, satsangs, like everything, you name it, really searching for the answer. And ultimately it originally started out as wanting to understand what I was doing here, what life was. Like, these were questions I had my whole life. Like, why am I alive? What is the world? Like, what's the purpose of this, And then that eventually turned into seeking for spiritual awakening and enlightenment. And went on that journey, was very devoted and dedicated to it until I came to the realization that what I had been seeking was actually the very place that I was existing in my entire life, and that I had been looking for some higher version of me that was only an imagined concept, when true enlightenment can only ever be found now. And I was searching for it in the past and the future. In the future. And I was searching for it through strategies and practices, which I realized just perpetuated and fed the belief that there was something wrong with me. I had to fix something. I needed to correct that, when, of course, that was just thought identification and ego that was fueling this search the entire time. And so ever since I came to the realization that this is it, this moment is what you're looking for. It's already exposed. It's already here now. It's just this. I have become very passionate to share this message with others because I find that a lot of the spiritual teachings out there and the pointings are really just meeting seekers at the thought level. And what I do in my sessions and what you experienced with me last week is going beyond the thought level, because it's ultimately not a thought, it's not a concept that you're looking for. It's what's here without the thoughts. It's what's here without the concepts. And in my sessions, I basically act as a guide to facilitate a reorientation into just the truth, the clarity, the pureness that's already been here. That's always been here. It was just covered up by seeking and egoic identification.
Oh, that's powerful. I mean, effectively, that is the core of this entire, if you want to call it a journey, because the way I see it is that the mind has to be led back so that it can, let go, and so it can connect with that that stiller part of us that's a little bit deeper, but is here, which resides in stillness. And from a practical standpoint, if your mind is always chattering with compulsive thinking about past and future, meaning thinking about, oh, what have I got to do tomorrow, how am I going to pay the bills, are we going to have enough money for the kids to go to college, the dog needs to get walked, and living, and this whole idea of, well, really, it's not really an idea. It's pretty much everybody on the planet Earth does it, which is they see the future through the past, because there's this, we see these, we see the future through a very distorted, well, I mean, with some people it's more distorted than others, but through this very distorted lens, the filters have been caused by our past experiences. So the idea being is that when we can learn to transcend those experiences and be, because this whole thing about time is what gets people screwed, because that's literally where the world lives, is in time. And this was a concept that I was really introduced to through a book, which I have read, I don't know, like at least 100 times, because I get obsessed with these kind of things, and I just because every time I read it, it's everything that's in it deepens the awareness. And that book is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he really ties into and the reason I mention it is because his message effectively is that there's no other moment than now, and that now is timeless because it's always now. And it's, whether it's 5 minutes from now or 5 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago was a former now, and then now is now. And then in 5 minutes, when we get there, it'll be now. So it's always now. And time is just, the way I see it, it's just a way to measure the flow of life. But we get caught up in the measurement system of it and identify with it, and then we forget about who we actually are, or we get identified with this concept of time and this illusion of form, and wind up suffering effectively. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And even I know we need to use words because we need to point to things, but even now, even calling it now, it's we can, because there's a lot of talk in the spiritual community about going into the present moment, becoming the present moment, staying here. But also, I just wanted to point out that really you are what you are at the present moment. It's not something that you go in and you go out of. It's what's always here, effortlessly. And coming into that, it's you can even take the word now away if you want to go even deeper, even into the subtler levels, that even saying now, and I get why he says it, But even saying now as a concept, it still kind of inherently can create a bit of a separation for the mind to think that that's something that I need to find, I need to stay into, when actually what the process is just a dropping away of the illusion that you were anywhere else but now.
And I think the reason why they do that is because when people are preoccupied with some fictitious illusion about something being trapped in, in a schedule, they're missing out on the conscious. It's being conscious of being present, as because obviously, if I'm distracted and I'm doing something that is, or if I'm ruminating about something that happened 10 years ago, yes, I'm doing it now, but I'm not conscious that I'm doing it, because it's a regurgitated habit. And I think this is this is when we truly take our power back. And there's a million other benefits, which, if people really do want to find out, read the book at least 10 times. But it's this existing here now and being aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so now you mentioned that you had a very poignant moment where a light went off. What exactly was like the precursor to that? I mean, obviously it was the entire experience about being brought up the way that you were, et cetera, but I'm sure that the last, whatever, there was maybe a chain of events, or one particular thing after a bunch of stuff that kind of led to this, this awareness that you finally had to, to start, that ultimately changed the trajectory from where you were going.
Yeah. So for me, it was more of a gradual process. I started working with a mentor who's doing the type of work that I am doing right now. His name's Emerson. He's awesome. And he was a huge catalyst in this coming into clarity. He's and just pointing out the fact that the directness that you're already in is the only thing that's existing. And so for me, my mind had a lot of beliefs. It had a lot of concepts about what it was supposed to look like to come into awakening, or to awaken.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, that kind of trapped me, because I had my ego, my separate self, in a sense, the thoughts were searching and searching for another moment in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that it's already here, there's nothing hiding on you, there's nothing missing, it's just what is, go into what is. And really feeling that like on the nervous system level, the peace,
Mm-hmm.
and the simplicity and the silence and the subtleness of just existing with what's here beyond language, with what's here beyond the labels and concepts. And over time, there were moments of silence, there were moments of clarity. The character would come back as well, particularly in social situations. But it's like the pull isn't there so much. It's like, after a couple months, I turned around and was like, oh, I haven't really been suffering in a while. I haven't really been too concerned about the future. I haven't really been sad or feeding into the thoughts about, whatever it was for the day, all the different concerns that the mind has, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just felt less and less appealing to me. And the attachment to thought and the attachment to the story is just gradually slowed down. And I was kind of coming in and out of the clarity, spending moments within it, and then also, feeling the mind going, but not really making that a problem in a sense. Like if the mind had a song stuck in its head, or it was imagining a conversation, whatever it does, I just kind of let it do that. And I didn't make that a problem, because, in spirituality, I think we use the mind to try to control the mind, and not realizing that it's all mind, right? We hear about this concept of ego, and that the ego wants validation, the ego wants to appear a certain way, and then we make the ego the bad guy. And then we say, oh, I need to meditate, I need to stop these egoic thoughts, I need to dominate these egoic thoughts, not realizing that that is also an egoic thought wanting to dominate it. So it's really just a dropping. It's just a dropping of all kind of attachment to concepts, and realizing that it was just an imaginary story that was playing out in my head. And the more and more this sobering up, this clarity, just kind of began to spread throughout this experience. There was a lightening, there was a freshness, and there was just an openness to whatever would come. And like the uncertainty that I used to be plagued with for a lot of my life, kind of actually started feeling more exciting. Like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen, kind of thing, rather than I need to know what's going to happen. I'm unsafe if I don't know what's going to happen.
So it sounds, so you dissolved that chronic attachment to the outcomes of the ego, and you were able to catch probably one of its dirtiest tricks, which is being trying to get out of identification with one way by trying to identify in another way when you're and it just creates this vicious loop.
The spiritual ego, yeah.
Right? So because it doesn't matter whether it's what the topic is, it's still ego. And I actually did a video on this. I'm not sure if I've published it yet, because I've got so much stuff that's on my phone that's just kind of sitting there waiting for the right time to. But I did do a video on the ego. I called it the ego integration, and it was all based on this idea that the ego is kind of like in a way, it's kind of like a gatekeeper, and it's kind of like you kind of have to take what it says with a grain of salt, because it's ultimately illusionary. And it's kind of like the moon card in tarot, where it's all about truth and illusions, and finding the truth in the illusions. And I really think that is is a really good metaphor, to be able to, for what the ego represents, is because it's kind of like it's not always the fun way, but it's, but if you can, when you develop enough of nowness, for lack of a better term, to understand the more subtle cues, it actually acts as a gateway into what we're talking about. Because in that process, when you just kind of notice, or the technique of noticing the thoughts or noticing the emotions is, and it's, as you said, and this is something that I have had to do, like I've had to be very, very, very almost obsessive about, just because of the nature of the way that my mind works. And I'm talking about my human mind. And this was a thing that I had created as a kid, just this overly active, just, asking like a million questions, but never really coming to any conclusions, because it would just create this distraction from whatever kind of chaos that I was, just so I wouldn't have to deal with it or whatever. And so this is something that I've been able to, now navigate my way out of. And just having to be really, really, I can't think of the word, but just really aware of when of when that part starts talking, so that I don't get dragged into these 2-hour long conversations in my head, that tennis match. It's like, oh, I really want to do this, but oh, I don't know if I should, because and you feel guilty about something or whatever the case. So I just this whole thing about learning to be present and being aware of what's going on, and being okay with it. I think that's another piece. I was actually chatting with somebody the other day, and they were trying to quit smoking, and they've been trying to quit for I guess for a long time. And there was the whole thing. It's like, I want to quit smoking, but I really enjoy smoking, and I feel guilty if I quit smoking. But on the other hand, I feel bad, and I feel guilty for smoking because I want to quit smoking. And so there was just this whole, right. So it's like, okay, make up your mind, which, you have, because you can't have both. Either you're going to quit or you're going to stay smoking. So if you're going to stay a smoker, just, learn to, surrender to the idea of being okay with it until the time comes when you're ready to quit. Because it's when we really try to start to force things like this, where we get that split, and it ultimately leads to suffering.
Yeah. And ultimately what's going on is it's just a bunch of thoughts at the end of the day. And the illusion that is actually there is that those thoughts are for someone. And that imaginary someone is what we call the ego. So the thoughts are coming up like, I need to quit smoking. What's going to happen if I don't quit smoking? But when you actually look for the one who those thoughts are referring to, you cannot find it, right? There's just this assumption that there's this character, that there's this identity here, and we name it Rob and we name it Trina. There's a body here, there's a nervous system here, but where is the character? Where is that person? And in my sessions, what I do, I get people into this place where there's a lot of silence and there's a lot of stillness, and there's nothing but just this directness of what's here, just this exposed innocence, effortless moment. And then I say, where is your identity? Just in this moment, where is the person? And it's like, oh yeah, it's just a thought. So all of these thoughts that are coming up are inherently empty. There's no person in there that's choosing the thoughts, right? But there's a thought that's claiming those thoughts as me, but there's no one actually choosing. It's just a conditioned program, and it's somehow entwined with our nervous system because there's this belief that those thoughts are my voice. But when you actually see through what's happening, you realize that it's only taking place in the imagination. And particularly when it comes to letting go of addictions, one of the best ways that, especially I know of some people that are doing kind of the work that I'm doing as well, but they're applying it to quitting smoking. And the way that she's found the most success in it is to show the mind when it's constantly going to the future. If you can just stay with what's here and see that the thoughts are trying to pull you into this imaginary future, the craving isn't as powerful anymore because you're not imagining something that's not real. You're just with what's real.
Well, exactly. And, from a neuroscience standpoint, what winds up happening is anytime you bring awareness to a pattern and you just feel the energy, it actually breaks it up in real time. And so the actual the physical neural pathway, it starts to, it's kind of like, I like to use the analogy of a highway. So if you have a highway that you don't resurface every couple, especially in Canada, if you don't resurface that highway every couple of years, it's going to crack. And then eventually, there's going to be chunks of pavement you're going to have potholes, and eventually it's just going to get overgrown with weeds, and right. So, so the more that we live in these illusionary patterns that we have, now the more that they get strengthened. But, each time that we're able to, even if it's just for a moment, every time that we bring awareness to it, and this is why meditation is so powerful, is because, especially when you just focus on the breath and you notice the thoughts come in, you acknowledge it and then let them pass. And you're cultivating this sense of there's a million different ways to do it, and there's a million different types of meditation. And That's a whole other conversation though. But yeah, effectively it starts to break up the it starts to break up the association. And now there's another piece where I find, people that I work with get hung up, is that, and it's, now I don't get into doing like deep trauma stuff like PTSD, or people have been physically or sexually abused or anything like that. That is, that's beyond the scope of what I'm of my skill set. So that I would refer to to somebody who's specifically trained to deal with that type of that, because that's a whole other, that's on a whole different level. But it's the same principle that applies, because now with what they call small t traumas, which are which for most folks are tied with identity and so on and so forth, is that there's often a big emotional charge that is attached to it. Like, I don't know, say you went through a rough breakup or something, and there's a real sense of loss. Say, I don't know, you're with somebody for a number of years, and you kind of you build an identity around that, and a massive one too, and especially one that's so deeply coded, right? So one of the things that I have found that works really well is not only being able to bring the awareness to it, but is to actually being able to discharge the charge. Because it's basically, emotions are just, they're just a form of consciousness or energy that have a very specific type of information. And it's on a, I mean, I know this, but for our listeners, and it's on a feedback loop. And depending on what level of awareness it is, it'll register in different spots in the body. Now, for most people, they get stuck below the, in the first three energy centers in the, in the lower back, the sacral, and now for most people, it's in the solar plexus, because that's the area of identity and, self-esteem and so on. So there's just this huge, massive buildup of potential energy that is just dying to get out and go through the body and circulate and reintegrate. And that's where I'm finding, but it depends on the level of mind that you're coming into the work with. Because I find with a lot of people, and I mean, there's so many gurus out there, and people who are well-meaning, and the reason I know this is because I've done scans on so many videos that I've watched, and just like sitting with a message and the frequency of it. And while a lot of it is well-meaning, a lot of it is just regurgitated spiritual concepts, where people don't really have as much of a real embodied sense. And so it's still existing within the mind. And what I mean by within the mind is this, for lack of a better term, again, it's kind of a, if you were to look at it in density, you could call it the fourth dimension, because it's that oscillation between going into that higher awareness, or that tapping into that higher frequency that's flowing through you all the time. It's just a question of tuning into it, and that lower awareness. So it's kind of that transitional piece, because that's effectively what the fourth dimension is, if you want to look at it from a, to give people a reference point. And so it's just, there's just like this oscillation that happens, and and that's where most people get stuck, because they fail to realize that, because what can look like patterns can also actually be breakdowns of identity. Because when you're actually doing the work, the relief of it looks very similar to actually if you're still in it, but it's just a releasing of, because you're actually giving your body and your nervous system what it needs in order to reintegrate these. And people often get confused and mistake it for just thinking that the work doesn't work, and then they give up, and then they wind up just effectively getting stuck in the same loop again, and in some cases even re-traumatizing themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the body is so wise and it knows how to heal itself. It really does. Of course, it can use some help along the way with different practices, and particularly what's worked the best for me is a medicine called Cambo, which is something that I facilitate here. It's a frog secretion from the Amazon jungle. Amazing,
really?
helping to clear, to relax the nervous system. It's very healing for anxiety, depression, PTSD, and like a whole host of other detox benefits for the system.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing. It really helped me with some pretty solid depression that had been going through for many, many years. And I loved it so much. I went down to Mexico and did an initiation, became a facilitator. I've been working with it for almost 4 years now.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, the body really does know what to do. And particularly when we do feel uncomfortable emotions, like the guidance that I typically give is go into the feeling, but take the thoughts out of it. Because when emotions are coming up, they're often coming up to be processed. But the story around it, and the I'm so unworthy and I'm never going to get out of this, and why the universe hates me, like this kind of thing, that just perpetuates it more. And like you said, can even re-traumatize yourself. So let the emotion be there. Like, you're a human being. You feel it. Doesn't matter how enlightened you are or how awake you are. You're still going to feel sad when something happens, like when your dog dies, or like, that's okay. It's totally normal. If your nervous system's having a reaction to its environment, there's nothing that you can do about it, right? But the mind will want to come in and solve it, and it will solve it by using the only tool that it has, which is thought, which is about going into the past and the future, basically creating a story around it when it's trying to help, really. Like, it is trying to help, like, bless its little heart. But it's like this wild animal that hasn't been actually trained how to be used in an appropriate way. And then it often just ends up making the thing worse, because the story is not real. The story is
Mhm.
not real anymore. It's just a memory. It's just only real in the mental realm. The feeling is real. The feeling is happening now, but even labeling it like as anxiety or depression or any of that, like, you don't even need that. Like, you don't even need the word around the experience. Just be with what's happening. And that's it. The feeling's there. That's it. The story is something that's added on top of it, and it doesn't need to be there.
Okay, so say you were going to work with somebody who has zero exposure to anything to do with um, energy, or thinks astrology is a bunch of baloney, etc. Yet there is an but they're at a point where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and there's a level of surrender present. So how would you facilitate somebody, they're open-minded but they're very skeptical and they know zero about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just start off by going really basically into what's here, asking what's here without any effort. What are you without language? And as the mind begins to reflect on these questions, it kind of helps it to drop into this space that's already here. And the space that's already here doesn't need a concept. It doesn't need a strategy how to work something out. It's already effortlessly right here.
Hmm.
And that can really help to still the mind and the nervous system, and come into silence, And then, of course, if emotions arise, I would offer the same guidance. Go to the feeling. But because a lot of the time too, people will say, well, I have this feeling like something's not right, or I have this feeling like I'm just not good enough. And it's like, okay, where's the feeling? Point to the feeling right now. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's just a thought, or that's just an idea. And feelings are real. Feelings can be real too, but a lot of the times what we feel is often just the mind's interpretation of a situation.
Okay. Now, in terms of, because obviously we understand that there's a difference between, repetitive egoic thoughts and behavior patterns, and then awareness that arises out of that place of stillness. You could still technically consider it thinking, but it's a much it's a which is coming out of the stillness, and it's a much higher quality. How would you broach that in a session, or is that even something that you would even do?
Are you saying consider awareness as thinking?
Well, I mean, it's a stream of thought that moves through your mind, that moves through your head or your heart, but it's coming from a place where your body is, your mind and body are in sync, and the again, from a neuroscience perspective, the two hemispheres of your brain are synchronized, and when they synchronize, it automatically creates a loop that gets filtered, so left brain, right brain, and it gets filtered through the heart, and it creates this a much higher level of inner coherence. So it's kind of like the gateway into communion with what is unnameable, that force that's, life force, source energy, whatever you want to call it. So how would you how would you broach that, or how would you work with that concept? Because obviously because you're going beyond that, and yet when you create the stillness with somebody, and thought does start to arrive, it's coming from a much more obviously they're more grounded, they're more connected, they're a lot more still. So how would you it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's like the midpoint, because it's obviously closer to pure consciousness than scattered everyday thinking, but I'm just curious how that would work with the work that you do.
Okay, let me just make sure I understand your question. You're saying how, like, once kind of people recognize the stillness, the silence, and then they have a thought, how to work with that? Are you saying?
Yeah, but it's not a thought that's, you can visually see and tell that they are now in a different place, that they are in communion with whatever you want to call it, stillness, presence, life, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
And now the stream of thinking that they're having is more of it's awareness based versus, illusion based.
Right. Well, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with thoughts. Like, it's okay that we have thoughts. It's a survival tool. Like, it's helpful that we have thoughts. There's nothing wrong. We don't want to make thoughts the bad guy.
Mm.
The where the illusion arises is because we believe that we are those thoughts. And so when people are accessing, for lack of a better term, this subtleness, this clarity that's already here, and then a thought arises, the thought just arises. Like, there's nothing to do about it. There's nothing that you can do to control it or make it not real. But there can be more of it's like almost a slowing down, where where you're able to perceive, one is able to perceive the kind of function of thought. And oftentimes people will say, like, yeah, I'm feeling the mind coming up and having questions, and now it wants to know about this. And then it's just like, so for instance, okay, yeah, I feel this clarity. How do I keep it? Like, how do I hold it? Right. Which is a thought. And then I will say something like, well, what are you without that thought?
Okay.
Right. Or you're going to the future again. Your mind comes up and goes to the future, which just muddies the water again.
Okay.
But it's
Now,
already right here.
okay. So now if it's more of an awareness based thing as opposed to like say a question, um, or they have like a light bulb goes on, right? Because those are again those types of, I like to call them let's call them awareness pieces. And I'm just doing this because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to illustrate a difference between these types of, again, for lack of a better term, thoughts going through your mind versus day-to-day stuff that is based on being completely unconscious, being completely unaware, and just being stuck in repetitive thinking. So you have these, you have an awareness piece that comes up. It's like, oh my God, you're right. These thoughts that I have, like the egoic thoughts, they're not real. They're just a bunch of baloney.
Mm-hmm.
So that awareness. So I guess I'm getting more at that, at that awareness piece. If things like that were to present themselves.
Yeah. So that realization is not really a thought. Like, there's a realization there, and then words or thoughts can come on top of it to kind of interpret or communicate what the realization was already. But it's just this recognition of the base foundational reality that's already been here. But we've been searching for it through thought. But it can be seen more clearly when you experience what's here without the language.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That makes, yeah. That.
And the other thing interesting is, even when we're speaking, when we're communicating, sometimes we can premeditate about what we're going to say, but very often, if you've ever actually observed yourself while speaking, it's really just coming out naturally. You're not like, okay, I'm going to say this sentence and then this sentence and then this sentence. It's like you can maybe have a general idea about what you're going to speak, but I don't know what's going to come out. Right? There's just an impulse to speak. There's a vibration in the throat, and then words and sounds come out. It's all just happening very naturally, right? So that you don't even really need a thought in order to speak, in order to communicate.
Because the thought could, yeah, it's almost like, in a way, it's almost like reading a script.
Yeah, or creating a script. Yeah,
like reading a mental script or
right?
something like that. Yeah. So yeah, this is I'm really enjoying this perspective on this whole thing, because it's just, it's very simple.
Yeah.
And you're very easily able to bring it back to, and I think this also, I think a lot of this too has a lot to do with how your system works. And and like you had said, you were craving clarity for like forever. And then when you were finally able to find it and realizing that it was here the whole time, it just, your system recognized it as truth. And it's been very easy for you to communicate it and share it in such a way that is just very simple, very, very easy, where people don't necessarily have to go through this, like this lengthy process of, going to, I don't know, going to Peru and living in a cave for a year, kind of extremes, to be able to, cultivate this. So now when you are working with people, do you also try and get them to do other things in more of a physical sense, to be able to promote being able to maintain that kind of state?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it gets a bit people kind of have a hard time with this sometimes, because what I found anyway is once you've kind of tasted this clarity and you understand what I'm talking about, there's really nothing left to do, because anything that I would say, practices or takeaways, would just be more stuff for the mind, right? So as people are coming into this, say if they're recognizing it for the very first time, I will suggest, like, okay, you can spend some time throughout the day asking yourself, what's here without language? And as you begin to kind of familiarize yourself with this space, it will just naturally begin to unfold. So, really the best thing to do, and this is what my mentor has taught me as well, who's been doing this for much longer than I have, is just to get out of the way. Just to get out of the way and let it unfold in its own way, because you're not controlling the thoughts. You're not controlling the words. You're really not, there's no you that's controlling anything. It's actually just a dropping away of the illusion that there was something for you to do, that there was a you that was controlling something. When there's just this freedom, this openness for creation and for potential that's manifesting itself within you, but it's like kind of a formula.
Okay. Okay. I guess what I was getting at too was like staying hydrated, or stretching, or being physically active, because obviously when we create these cohesive states within the body, it's much easier to just, be in that space of presence as much as possible, because your energy levels are high, and you've got all the minerals that your body needs to do what it needs to do, and stuff like, I know for myself, like there's I have days, and it's very frequent, where I will be, it'll be like rumination city, and I'll feel like I want to cry like all day long. I don't sit there and think about it, but it's noticeable, because there's a noticeable emotion that is present all day, and so it's just, and I have found that when I get into those types of spaces, it just means that I need more sleep, or something, or I've been doing too much of something and not enough of something else, but I'm also, I've trained myself enough to know that it's just an emotion, and the reason that it's stronger today as opposed to, say, a week ago, is just by virtue of what's going on in my body right now. And this is just the body's way of processing it today, versus, because sometimes, stuff can happen, and I mean, it doesn't faze me, but other times it's just like something will come up, and now I've got much better control of it now. And when I say control, I mean the ability to disidentify with that as being like a real thing, meaning like, oh, I'm a bad person because, I didn't make enough calls today, or I didn't send out enough DMs, or, or why is what, blah, blah, blah. Right. So now in terms of like, I guess, so when you decided to take on these, because you've mentioned, you've from a you've done things with, like, you're really interested in human design, and then you did astrology, and you found the 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 plant medicine, or whatever have you. Were there Okay, so when, for example, when you found astrology, what was what was going on energetic, or even if you remember, like, what was going on energetically at that time, and what was it that led you to become an astrologist and be like a freaking expert?
Yeah, so I was living in India. I'd been there for a year. Well, I was there for a year in total. I went to see a guru there and went to go and do a whole bunch of non-duality stuff. And it was the monsoon season and I didn't really know what to do. And so I went and had a reading with a well-known Vedic astrologer. And he told me that I should be an astrologer. And I didn't really know much about it. And he offered to train me. And I had nothing else going on. So I said, sure. So I went and sat with him for 3 weeks. And I got to listen to him do all of these readings for all of these people. And it was just amazing the kind of information he was able to tell them based on their chart. And he kind of introduced me to this topic. And from there, I just started doing courses and readings and exploring it to the depth. Yeah. So it felt really, I thought that that's what I wanted to do. I thought for a long time that that was my calling. And I still love astrology. I do love the study of it. This character does anyway. Is it necessary to have a realization of what I'm talking about? No, absolutely not. Astrology is really one of my not that guy, but my second astrology teacher. I remember him saying, if you want to know exactly what you are not, look at your astrology chart, because ultimately it is the map of delusion. It is the map of the character. It is the map of the functioning of the mind that we take ourselves to be. It's useful and it's helpful and it's super interesting to show how everything's all connected. And, the freaking planets like millions of miles away in our solar system are dictating the cycles that's going on in an individual life is mind-blowing to really see that in action, how it all fits together.
Tell me about it.
Like this interconnected web of just systems and patterns that are going into even little things as well. You can see it showing up even just with the lunar cycles every month. So I find that quite fascinating, but it's also not what I'm talking about either.
Because what you're doing now is beyond that.
Yeah, it's not about the story. It's not about what happens in the story. It's not about the beliefs, the thoughts, anything that takes place, good or bad, right? It's what's between good and bad.
Yeah, it's that stillness that's, and it's that, or for lack of a better term, emptiness.
Yeah, it's the space that allows for everything. It's a space that doesn't have a judgment, that doesn't, like, the judgments are layered on top of it, right? And that is ultimately the voice of culture, of society, of our parents. It's not even our voice, right? It's like the mind, in a sense, the thoughts hypnotize us into believing that we are these imaginary characters named Rob, named Trina, and that, we need to prove ourselves or we need to do whatever the thoughts are telling us. But it's just very subtle, not even sounds, words that are playing in our mind. That's the one problem, I remember Osho saying, you think you have a million problems, but you only have one problem. And that's you're taking your thoughts to be yourself. Because once that drops away, there's only just this perfection.
Yeah, and it's kind of this, and again, it goes back to this, yeah, just this. I mean, we could sit here and slice it 10 ways from Sunday, but at the end of the day, it is just, it is just that. And now I know you also mentioned human design, and the reason I bring these up is because these are tools that I use in the work that I'm doing with the code, because because like I said, the mind is the mind is it's present, and it's something that we need to in the to some extent anyway, it needs to be included, because we all know what it was like when we were kids, when we never got picked for the team, and it sucked. Well, at least I thought it sucked, because you wanted to be like on the team and you were like anyway. So just lost me.
The human design.
Yes. So yeah, so I think it's like when you can give the mind something, there's a huge in anyway, in what I've noticed is that there's this, and it's not just giving them a something, it's giving them a something special or something very integral. And what I've noticed is that in doing that, it helps to create a letting go, or facilitating the process of letting go to all these attachments. Because when people realize that they are the way that they are because they're supposed to be, and once that concept really starts to take root, it's a game changer for people. I know it was for me. I discovered human design maybe 4 years ago, and I just went on as I do, based on my personality and such, I went on a freaking tear. And I was listening to, this was before AI was as good as it is today. And I just went on a tear, wanting to understand every human concept about what this meant and what that meant, and what a manifesting generator was, and what a this, and all this kind of stuff. And it ultimately, after going through all that, it led me to this poof, was that, yeah, this is, it basically validated what I had always been aware of, but was always, there was other things attached to it as well, because, you think you're a bad person or whatever. And it was just, it was like this huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Like, I cannot tell you. So,
Yeah.
So in terms, go ahead.
Sorry, go. Oh, I was just going to add to that and saying that, yeah, it's no different than understanding the constitution of the body, and like certain foods, certain herbs, certain activities are better for different body types and different ways. Like maybe you have a weaker stomach, maybe you have a weaker liver, and there's certain herbs and stuff that, or maybe some people need to do, high intensity training or low intensity training based on what the body needs, right? And so these cosmic tools like human design, gene keys, astrology help us to just find some clarity about the path that we're on. And like for me, for instance, I'm a manifesting generator and I'm a 1-3 profile. So investigating martyr, right? So suits with the story, right? I had to make all the mistakes first. I had to go really into it and learn through experience, learn through my own mistakes to share the message with others, right? I'm not going to believe you when you tell me the stove's hot. I need to check it for myself, right? And so
now in terms of human design, so when you look at all your traits on both sides of the chart, have you ever counted or do you know the amount of which numbers that you have? So like if it's like 8.3 or whatever.
Oh, like how many centers I have?
No. So if you go down both sides of the chart, it'll be like, so on the personality side, it'll be like 8.3 or 14.3, and then on the design side, it'll be like 30.6 and 29.6. So
like
that's
for the gates, you mean?
Yeah. So it's the number in the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever? Yeah.
The second number, the point.
Yeah.
And so you saying you tally those up?
Yeah, because because those points represent where you are in your evolution of that particular gate. So, for example, like my profile is I'm a 3-6, so martyr role model, but I also have 9 gates that are 1, which is investigator. So it's just another way of, right? So there's these different ways that you can interpret, and it's the same thing with what kind of charge you have too, because certain gates will be yang, and other gates will be yin. And, and there's this, and kind of going back to what you're saying and the work that you're doing. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge that reality with this kind of more of a moment to moment thing. So what I like to do is I like to assess where people are at regarding their relationship with the two polarities in their body. And this then gives people an automatic awareness, to realize whether or not they're in flow, and so they can be, and because there's distorted versions of polarity, and then there's connected versions of polarity. And so for the work that you're doing, it's like it's actually goes beyond where the polarity it merges into one, and it's just what is, right? So but it's learning how to do this, for lack of this dance between the masculine and the feminine, in order to, because the ratios are going to change depending on, first of all, what your makeup is, right? And so I've found and have some tools that I like to use, because it takes, it took me, I don't know, more than 10 years to figure all this out. But along with that came the understanding that, from a day-to-day basis, this is really, if you wanted to simplify it, right? So it's kind of like this oscillation between what you do and just being like, I'm the witnessing presence of what the human is doing. But then taking it consciously to weave it in such a way of whatever the next, of whatever it is I'm confronted with in the present moment. So it's kind of like this, you're in the spaces in between, but you're also, it's kind of like nothing in, it's what comes out of the nothing. It's the nothing in action, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So it's really that, the feminine presence is there, which is the totality of everything. But then there's also the masculine charge, or the electric charge, that brings it to life, and brings or that kind of animates it into, that takes it from, it's kind of like in quantum physics, where you're a wave, and then you're a so-called particle, and it's the process of collapsing the wave function to bring things into reality. And so I've just found that, you don't need to get super, super technical about it, because I like to get technical because I love all the nuances and details. My brain is like yum, yum, yum. It's like Pac-Man for this. But, when you can present it in such a way, and people are able to understand, when they're in, there's kind of basically just two modes. So if you're overly masculine, it means you're in like, you're in like dictator mode. So you're like, this is where people are very vengeful and controlling and all this kind of stuff. Or the other extreme is when it's kind of, you could view it as kind of like a wounded feminine, where you're feeling like a victim, and, you're giving your power away. And it's really kind of bringing it together, and just learning to trust your own unique makeup to be able to navigate through, the vicissitudes of daily living.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that, like, nature has a way of it's already happening, really. Like, nature has a way of balancing it out. And once the illusion begins to clear up from the mind that I am these thoughts, once that illusion is, one is liberated from that, even the need for the understanding of duality and non-duality and all of that, it can almost just become, it's interesting, but it's also just concepts, because there really is no duality and non-duality. Those are just labels that the mind is creating to interpret just what is,
Okay.
but it's happening simultaneously.
Okay. So in terms of so if you had someone, okay, so say you had me, and obviously, through this chat, you've obviously you know me a little better. So say I came to you with, the mind that I do and all this kind of stuff, but I knew nothing about any of this. How would you explain, or would you just let it be more experiential and just say
Yeah.
you would just ask what's beyond the thought?
Yeah, exactly. It's a questioning process, because like when I was being met at the thought level, as a spiritual seeker, 10 years I studied non-duality for, and followed gurus and listened to YouTube videos and did retreats and did meditations and satsangs and all of that. I had so much information in my mind, but it was really just the thoughts searching, right? So what's
And
here right now that's not a thought?
mm,
Or what's here before the next thought?
and I'm just absolutely just loving how you make this so simple. Like it's ridiculous
Yeah, it
how
is simple.
how simple it is,
Yeah.
because the mind is like, and I can tell, and this is just, this is also me just trying to stimulate things, for our listeners to be able to, because repetition is the mother of all skills, right? Is to hear this, give some different scenarios where the answer is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and the reason for that is because all spiritual teachings they all come from the same source, which is this nothingness, or this. And you know what? It actually took me a long time to understand this concept of nothingness, even for, like, for me to wrap my brain around it. But the best example is a seed. It's like you go, you plant a seed in the ground, or in a pot, and you water it, and you give it love, and you say om, and pretty seed, love you, etc., etc. And then it starts to grow. And this is the miracle of life, is that it's so intelligent. And I don't think people really just take a moment and to and again, this is going back into the nothingness, but with a specific kind of, and just feel it from that standpoint, where it's like, there is no separation between me and the rock across the street, or me and the even the emotions in our body. Because remember how I was talking about this, the infinity loop as being at the center point, because you could be experiencing something on the one side, and then but the other side of it, it's always there. So there's no, because that center point is the nothingness, and then this side comes out of it, and then it goes back to nothing, and then the other side goes, and then it comes back to nothing. So it's this, it's so. What do you find is the biggest challenge with your clients um in this work that you do?
I would say the seeking energy that's been cultivated already from many past religious traditions, or just spiritual seeking in general, I would say, because that's been something that's been fed a lot.
Mm.
And I can say from my experience as well, that was something that was, yeah, it took a while to get over, because it had been perpetuated, consistently over time, like meditating every day, like trying to be like all of these practices that I was doing, and books I was reading and YouTube videos, trying to get it trying to find it, right? But I was looking for it in the story. And so really it's just letting the person know that it's okay to kind of drop into what's already here, that what you're looking for is already here, that needing to find something is just a belief. And the mind will have all of these different rebuttals about it, and just, having to meet it and be like, what are you without that belief? What are you without that thought? And pointing out. And then oftentimes, the mind will say something, and then you'll point out that it's a thought or that it's a belief. And then it's so sneaky, like it will reshape and turn into something else that convinces you. And you're like, yeah, but that's just a thought too. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're looking for something in words and concepts, but it's so simple. And that's the problem, really, because especially if you've been looking and looking and seeking, and to find that it's already right here, it can take time for that energy to kind of wind down and dissipate.
Well, yeah, because you're going to have a ball of energy that's been perpetuating for like years. And, it's just kind of like, for the most part, for most people, it's chipping away. Whereas, and at times you'll have a quantum leap, because you'll have a quantum realization about, about something, and then et cetera and so forth. And then it peels back a few more layers. So it's like peeling, like, constantly peeling a banana, right? Because you take off, okay. Then you go to bite it. Oh no, wait, no, something else still there. And I also think, and this is actually, so if you were to sum up if you could pick, I don't know, some themes that have been reoccurring themes for you, since whenever. What would be, say, the top 2 or 3 be?
With what do you mean reoccurring themes?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So, like, where you've had challenges. Like, so for me, intimate relationships has been a challenge, like a big challenge. Finance has also been a like, and controlling my emotions.
Okay, gotcha. Like, for me, for the character personally, are you saying?
Yeah, because ultimately working, and the reason, and I'll tell you why in a sec.
Okay, yeah. Like, the biggest one for this character is just like the feeling of like being lost, kind of not knowing what I'm doing here, like a lot of uncertainty, a lot of and that's kind of where the whole spiritual seeking journey, I feel, stemmed from, was this like deep discontent with life and feeling like there's something off, there's something missing. I don't get life. I don't feel like I belong here. Nothing's working for me. I'm not like integrated into society. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, so I guess just a feeling of like loss and feeling lost and wanting to find ways to escape from that.
Okay. And so in terms of, so from that core thing, how did that, 2 or 3 very continual ways that would always manifest in the world, like in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, isolating myself for sure. Traveling around, I've traveled a lot, and never like finding something like stable that I could stick to. Like, moving a lot, traveling, many different jobs, many different like friend groups, and even belief systems and things that I would get into. And I have collected like a lot of skills over time, and I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades in some aspect, just because my journey has been so rich in that way. But it was a large source of discontent for the mind, because I was just not grounded.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course the issues with my family as well. I would say the difference in belief systems what created an issue in the relationship. Yeah.
Okay. And so when did you first get introduced to this type of work? Because you
Like
said you had
spirituality or
this
direct pointing. Yeah, earlier
yeah,
was when I ended,
yeah, the process, and you started working with Emerson.
yeah, earlier this year was when I ended seeking.
Oh, so this is very new. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It
wow.
was a long time coming.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like it.
A long
Yeah.
time coming.
And so just to loop back, the reason why I asked you if you could share some of those themes was because it's kind of innate to our design. Because obviously your makeup is coded a certain way to have a certain type of experience. And I don't mean like specific, like with whatever. It's more just the energetic resonance of it and how that's, and obviously with your profile too, it's like, I mean, it's like duh, if you understand these things. But also it was inevitable that you would wind up doing this because the path that led you here was very, I mean, I'm of the not belief, it's more of an inner like, yeah. And it's not fate, because fate is ill-advised. That's just what we call when we're unaware. But it's like there's definitely a plan for sure. Now, we have the option, or the character has the option of how they execute the plan in terms of the energies, how they work with the energies that they do, or the lens that it's worked with, because I know lots of people who are very content in life and have no clue about any of this stuff. They just, they do things from their own lens. Like I have this guy who's a friend of mine, funniest guy ever, right? He's always got this really freaking cheesy grin on his face, like, and he's always had it ever since I've known him since grade 6. So years and years and years. And he is exactly the same now as he was when he was 15, 18, 25. Exactly. The guy's probably gotten mad twice in his whole life. And he's just like, everything to him it's not that he thinks life's a joke, but he just doesn't think that it's worth getting all bent out of shape over it. And he just laughs about everything. And so I asked him once, I said, Trev, like, what's your, I mean, if you were to have a philosophy on life, he goes, what would it be? And he's like, well, I'm not really a deep thinker or anything like that, but I just think that, there's no point in getting all bent out of shape over stuff, because, it's interesting because he works for like a demolition company. So he drives machines, and he's been doing that since he was 18. But he's like, I guess I'm just focusing on what I'm doing when I'm doing it, and I'm not really worried about anything else. So it's like he's got this natural sort of way of being where he's always in the present moment, and he doesn't take life too seriously. And I just find it, he's just his way of like going through life is very simple. And it's just, for him, life just, for the most part, just flows. And I just think it's amazing, because there are actually people like that out there that don't have to go through, you know what I mean? So again, long story short, but this whole idea of, everybody is, I mean, let's face it, everybody's on a path of some kind, right? it may not identify as spiritual, and that's fine, because this isn't about the whole purpose of this is to learn beyond identity. But I just think it's refreshing that there are people out there who can naturally progress through life in that fashion without identifying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
totally agree that they don't need this long spiritual journey of trauma healing and meditation and all of that in order to just be content with life. It's, it's beautiful, but that wasn't my path.
no, and it's definitely not been my path. But what's funny is my path. It has. I mean, it has taken. I think in that regard we're very similar. I actually spent a ton of time out in BC when I was in my 20s. So I did the whole, BC thing. I tree planted.
Lived in Whistler.
I was in Whistler for 6 years.
Snowboarded. Oh, crazy.
Yeah, I was there from 98 to 03 and then again in 06. And I got my first tree planting job in Prince George when I was in 95. And then I did that until 06 when I officially retired. And it was great because it was just like living free and adventure, and you didn't really have too much to worry about. And then I got into real estate, and I'm kind of at the tail end of my real estate career, and which has been wonderful. But it's through this process. It was really the when I got into real estate, because this other part of me was always there. And so like when I was planting, it was great because you're outside, you're in the dirt, and it's just you're in the freaking mountains, and it's just there was that eternal part of me that was just kind of loving it. But then it was more than time to go. And so then I started on this real estate journey, and then that's when this whole thing really started to take root, and where I really started to see these other manifesting and all this other jazz. So yeah, I'm just curious. I'm just curious. How are you for time?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Right.
If you have a few more questions.
Yeah, I do. Actually, why don't we take a quick maybe a couple of minutes just for a quick bathroom break, or get a glass of water with me? Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you in a minute.
Okay.